sure I'm going to look at the slides. All right, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for coming. We got somebody, we got pizza and beer. Housekeeping, does everybody have access to Wi-Fi? The password's up here. Okay. So if you're following along, hopefully everybody did their homework. If not, no big deal. Right? So I'm one of the organizers of this meetup. Rainya Mosher, my counterpart, she's a racker. I don't know if you guys have been to any of the other meetups, but you know who she is when she's around. She's the one that keeps me on the clock, so that's probably why we're getting started at 7:12. So, but we try to do a meetup once a month. The topics that we cover, they're open to you guys, right? The community. So at any point, if you feel like, hey, this is something about OpenStack that I think is really cool, or hey, I'm just getting started, I need a one-on-one, or you want to dive into storage or any other component of it, hit me up and let me know, because I'm looking for that feedback, because I can get speakers. It's just a matter of kind of knowing what you guys are interested in and what you want to come listen to. The next event, at least the one that's on Meetup right now, is the August 25th event at Rackspace. So you'd actually need to register with the Eventbrite. It's actually a foundation event. The idea is to elicit feedback from the operator community to push that out to the developers that are actively working towards Kilo. And making sure that feedback is received by them and operators are getting the things that they need within OpenStack. So it's mid-cycle through the process before the next summit, which is, like I said, Kilo release. It's in November. It's in Paris. If anybody's going to go or think they might be able to go, now's the time to put in, I guess, your travel request, because expect to get shut down last minute. I know I will. That's it. That's just the housekeeping stuff. Really, the star of the show is Kent. He drove down from Austin. He's a field engineer with Canonical. He's on site with Dell. Any piece of Dell hardware that you touch, he's touched first before anybody knew about it, and validated and ensured that Ubuntu is going to run well, run stable on it. Right?
Yeah.
Is that a good?
Yeah, not so much client machines anymore, but yeah, servers for sure. Anything that's 11G or 12G and soon to be 13G. I've run it through the ringer and tried to fix things where I could.
Can people in the back, can you hear us okay? Val? Okay, cool. So we actually had a bit of a challenge with the AV here. So he's going to walk through his deck on my laptop. So he found that. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Thank you. So as Ben was telling you, I've been with Canonical for about 4 years now. I work out at Dell in Austin, Texas. Mostly my work's been in the last couple of years with PowerEdge, certifying Ubuntu with all the PowerEdge machines. The current 12G, and we did the 11G for 1404. And then the next line that's coming out here soon, I hope. We'll be certifying that with Ubuntu 1404. In addition to testing and helping Dell out, making sure that our stuff runs well on their hardware, I work a lot with some of our cloud deployment tools like Juju and Moss, and installing OpenStack with those tools. Again, it's just mostly to make sure that the Dell machines just work, and for the most part they do. Rarely do we have any problems with them. You can pretty much stack a bunch of Dell servers, and if you want to deploy OpenStack using Juju and Moss, you can. The hardware's fortunately not very complicated and doesn't require anything special. Everything needed to Ubuntu just works on it as far as deploying a cloud on it's concerned. I've also written a white paper on using Ubuntu and Mosher with 14.04 to deploy workloads, OpenStack, Hadoop, whatever you want on PowerAge servers. I do like playing around with new hardware, Linux, open source software. So the topic of this, tonight is going to be, how do you get OpenStack installed on one machine, and why would you do it? Of course, there's multiple reasons, but I guess the top three are if you develop on, you're interested in developing on OpenStack. Running OpenStack on one machine is good way to get familiar with the software. Kicking the tires if you've never seen it before and you're interested in the technology. I think these two are probably most people you go grab DevStack for is they're interested in it, but they don't have 5 or 10 machines laying around to bring up a full OpenStack cloud on it. There's different ways to do it. You can do it by hand. You can set up OpenStack, just get the RPMs or the dev packages or whatever you've got. Set up a bunch of VMs and Linux containers and do it from scratch. If you want to learn about the guts of how it's all set up, I recommend it. I mean, I've done it. It will take you a few days to get familiar with it, and along the way you'll make some mistakes, but sometimes that's the best way to learn it. I do have a book title if anybody's interested that'll actually do all this for you if you want to set up a bunch of VirtualBox VMs or whatever, and install OpenStack on one machine and do it all from scratch. It's pretty good. I did it last summer using that method, and I learned a lot. But there are other tools that make it quicker. There's DevStack, which is what we'll cover mostly tonight. And Red Hat has something called RDO Quick Start. I've never used it, but I've heard that it's another way to quickly get a small cloud up and running on your laptop or a single machine. And then we are working on a tool right now that you can actually get the bits for. It's called the Ubuntu Cloud Installer. It's another way to have OpenStack running on one machine. You'll need a fairly beefy machine to do this, but I'll go into a little bit of detail here at the end. What I'm going to try to do here is go through this slide deck, do less talking so you guys can get more hands-on. I've got steps on how to use DevStack here, so we can certainly bring the slide deck back up if you want. Once you actually want to get familiar with going through the DevStack installation process. So information on DevStack, their website's at devstack.org, easy to remember, and pretty much all it is a shell script, and it builds a complete OpenStack development environment on your laptop. But also understand what it's not. It's not a general purpose OpenStack installer. Don't expect to run a production cloud with it. I mean, some of this is obvious, right? And it's not intended to be everything to everyone. Don't expect to get some kind of fancy cloud up and running with DevStack, because there's a lot of stuff that's automated under the hood. You can customize it, but just be aware that it does have its limits. Here's some things that are supported. Obviously, based OS, you can be a VirtualBox VM or any kind of VM, or bare metal, old laptop, desktop, whatever you got. The operating system they support is the current Ubuntu LTS, which is their long-term support release. They release every 2 years, and it's supported for 5 years. And then the current intermediate development releases. So right now the current LTS releases, 14.04 is the latest, 12.04 is still supported, and 14.10, which will be out in October, that will be also supported with DevStack. Of course, Fedora, they'll go the current release and then the one behind it. The RHEL current major releases, I guess 6 and 7, since they're both current now, since RHEL 7 just came out about a month or so ago. And there's others that might work, but they can't promise. So Debian might work, but I think I've looked at the script a little bit, and it does have some stuff to check if you're running Debian, and it'll do certain actions. But again, those are I'm not 100% sure how well Debian will work. The databases it supports are usually Postgres or MySQL. These are ones that typically ship in most distributions. Messaging queues, Rabbit. Rabbit's typically what most OpenStack deployments use these days. And of course Apache Web Server. Other supported components with DevStack, the networking portion. Now by default, which is what we'll do tonight, just for the sake of getting familiar with how the process works, there's a flat DHCP. It's not a real complicated network setup, but they do offer, you can configure Neutron if you want, if you want to get familiar with Neutron, which is more of a software-defined networking type of solution for configuring OpenStack networking. And all the OpenStack services that go into an OpenStack cloud You know, Keystone, Cinder, Glance, Nova Compute, Nova Network, Horizon Swift, and then there's other components you can add in via plugins.
Does everybody know what the services are, or what each of those pieces do? Nobody's going to say if they know.
Well, Keystone's like authentication.
Can you tell me what they are?
So Keystone is like, pretty much everything in OpenStack has to go through Keystone. It's sort of your authentication mechanism, right? And you got Glance, which is your image service, Cinder's block storage, Nova, obviously your compute nodes for firing up, spinning up VMs. Horizon is your dashboard web interface that you can use to administer OpenStack with. Swift is object storage, and then there's others like Oscillometer and Heat and different components that I have had a little bit of experience with, but not a whole lot. But this is pretty much the core of what an OpenStack setup will have in it.
Yeah, I'd just say that, I mean, so, traditionally, I actually still work with people sometimes that say they have a cloud, and what they have is virtual machines, right? They have VMware, and then they have virtual machines, and then maybe they have some kind of dashboard over top. They've automated a few pieces,
right.
But what makes up a true cloud is, in my humble opinion, you have to have some self-service component, even if it's internal team. Keystone, I don't know if you want to go back.
Okay, sure.
I'm not trying to derail you.
No, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. But for self-service component, Keystone, it's going to provide the authentication, right? So who has access to what, right? Setting up quotas, how much they have access to, things that you need in order to deliver that self-service component. Cinder is going to give you block storage. People are going to want block within the cloud infrastructure. And then it's basically a API. Behind it, you're going to have different technologies that actually are going to deliver the storage. Glance, when somebody hops onto your cloud, they're going to want to use images. I mean, there's going to have to be, if you're Time Warner Cable, there's going to have to be predefined images that a security group has signed off on. It's going to be operating systems that are supported by the IT group internally, and those have to be stored somewhere. Now I want to take a snapshot, right? That's got to be stored somewhere. So I want to save my own images. That has to be stored somewhere. So Glance is going to help with that component. Nova is going to take care of a lot of, like I described, the VMware piece. Nova is basically the ability to spin up and down virtual machines. There's more to it. There's scheduling, right? Where does the machine go? Like what's the criteria around if it's placed here in this part of the organization, the data center versus this part of the data center? It's actually one of the more complex components of it. Network, so there's Nova Network, but it's been spun off into Neutron, and Neutron is its own project now, and it's pretty complex, and it's all the networking piece. Anybody looking to do SDN or give their customers or internal users access to setting up their own internal networks within OpenStack, it's going to allow them to do that. Horizon, like Ken said, that's the dashboard. That's what everybody sees. But then there's also the GUI, or I'm sorry, I said the GUI, the API. That's for your developers and your folks that are going to do everything programmatically. And then Swift is basically, you know what Swift is, yeah. And so that's going to be your highly scalable distributed storage infrastructure. So.
And DevStack will support single node. That's the one that most people use it for. They do say multi-node will work, sort of, but they don't test it very often. And there are instructions on the DevStack site on how to do a multi-node setup. So you can certainly give it a try if you do have a couple of machines to play around with. And they use the Tempest testing suite as a tool for exercising and testing. If you want to check that out on your DevStack setup. All right, so installing it, pretty easy. If you have a laptop or a VM set up already, you'll need to have the Git program installed. Git is basically the source code version control system, and that's where they host GitHub. DevStack hosts the project on GitHub. All the code is there, and I'll post these up later if folks want to go back and do it. Once I'm done. But you basically clone the repository to your local machine. You'll CD into the DevStack directory, and I recommend this. This isn't required, but in the root of your DevStack directory, you want to create a file called local.conf. And what that does is it just provides a few pre-configured options for you. Certainly more than this, way more than this. There's actually a local.conf sample file that they have in the source code to show you all the stuff you can configure. But at a minimum, you probably want to go ahead and set passwords. It doesn't have to be password, it can be whatever you want it to be. That's just so when you get ready to kick off the install, it's not stopping and prompting you for passwords for different services. If you go ahead and just fill this out and then kick off the install, you can just walk away and not have to sit there and type in, unless you want to. I mean, it's totally up to you, but that's just one suggestion there once you get going. And once you have everything ready to go, you just run the shell script and sit back while everything installs. It does take a lot of time. You can see a lot of things scrolling down the screen. It's installing packages. It'll go and grab the actual OpenStack code from the Git repositories, builds everything, sets it all up. I think the first time you run it, if you don't have everything downloaded already, like if you run it several times, more times you run it, like after the first time, it won't take as long. But like the first time, I think it took probably 40 minutes at my house to get it all done. But after that, it shouldn't take as long. But it will take a while for it to get it all downloaded and installed. And everything's automated. It sets everything up for you. So that's kind of the downside of DevStack a little bit, is that you don't really get to you can see what's happening, but you don't really know what's going on unless you've set things up by hand before. But the purpose of DevStack is just to get a small cloud up and running in a short amount of time. And then when you're done, in the console window, it'll say, okay, your Horizon is now available at this IP address, which is if you've got a laptop and you're on your Wi-Fi, it'll be the same. That's the same IP address as whatever your Wi-Fi was given. If you're in a virtual machine, whatever the host's IP address is, will be the IP, URL for your dashboard. And it'll tell you where Keystone's at. And there's further tips on how to do Nova client, command line stuff. All your default users. In this case, when I set this up, my password I just gave it to admin. And your host IP. So and then it'll tell you it finished and how long it took to finish up. And then, if everything's working, then you navigate your browser to the IP address that it told you should see your login screen, and you log in with the password that you gave. The username's admin, and then the password, whatever you gave the password in your local.conf file, whatever you gave it when you were setting this up, when you were prompted. And then once you log in, this will be the first thing you see. This is your usage summary. It gives an overview of your cloud. Of course, right now since it's brand new, we don't have anything exciting to show you at this point. So one of the first things you'll do before you start kicking off virtual machines is you'll want to set up an SSH key pair. And the first thing you'll do is there'll be an option here to create a key pair, which you can set up in the web URL. If you already have an SSH key pair you want to use, you can upload that to your OpenStack file. Here I created one called DevStack, and this is what you'll use if you want to log into your instances once you spin them up without password. And yeah, you can add multiple ones if you want. And then another thing you want to do, and there's a tab called Access and Security. You want to make sure, these are just two typical things that most folks will set up when they're setting up a cloud for the first time. These security groups control, how you can access the instances. In this case, it's probably a good idea to set up ICMP, which will allow you to ping your instances, make sure they're alive, and to SSH into them. So port 22 and then ICMP. But that's usually a pretty good practice if you're wanting to get familiar with OpenStack and play around with instances and be able to actually get inside of them and see what's going on. All right. And so the other thing that this DevStack installation does is that it goes ahead and pulls down some images for you to create instances with. So in this case, you'll go to the Instances tab. You'll start off with In this case, we have an instance here named test2 AMC0 as an image. The IP address that it was automatically assigned to when the image came up. Size, here's M1 Nano, that's a really small VM. The key pair that I showed you earlier. The status is active. It's in the Nova. Nova is one of the availability zones that you do by default. And it's running, and it just started, so I have 0 keys here. And there's other actions that you can do with the image once it's up and running. All right, and here I'm just showing what you can drill down into the instance, that test2 instance, and you'll have things like an overview. It'll tell you all about what all about the instance itself. There's a log file that shows you what happened when the instance came up. This is also a very good troubleshooting tool. With the fall file in space, you can kind of figure out what the last thing was before it died. And if it's up and running successfully, you can also put console, this will fire up a VNC terminal of your instance, and here's your login prompt and stuff for your newly created instance. And then when you're done messing around with it, or you've gone and played around with it or done something to screw it up and you want to start over again, you just simply run the unstack sh script and it tears down the environment for you and you can start fresh for the state. So that's pretty much all there is to installing it and just getting familiar with it. I do have one running on a laptop here that I went ahead and set up before you guys showed up if you want to take a look at it. And here's some URLs for you to look at. Like if you have frequently asked questions, if you want to give a multi-node setup a try, they have that as well. If you are interested in contributing to the project or fixing bugs, they have a link on how to do that. If you want to make tweaks to your DevStack installation, so I was talking about Neutron, if you want to set all that up, they go through all that as well. One more thing I'm going to cover is something called the Ubuntu OpenStack installer. This is also another way to get a single machine cloud up and running. It's easy to install. It's literally, it's very similar to the DevStack. You install one package, run one command, and answer a few questions, and it takes off running. Eventually, you can do it either with a single machine node or with multi-machines. And eventually it's going to support, Ubuntu has a tool called Landscape to manage your systems remotely. Landscape is going to have that ability to also help you get your cloud up and running on multiple machines and customize it to however you need.
I know it's still in beta, but it says multi-machine. How many
You need at least 5.
Okay.
5 is what they're recommending right now. I think 5, and I think with the Landscape, when the beta launches, you can get up to 10 free, up to 10 free slots. So yeah, you probably want to have 5 to 10 servers if you're going to do a multi-node install, or 5 to 10 computers laying around that are capable of pixie booting and doing virtual. The processors are virtualization capable, which usually generally with most modern computers is not a problem. And the tools that it leverages are something that Ubuntu produces called MOS, which is Metal as a Service. It is a way of provisioning bare metal servers with different workloads, and Juju for actually deploying those services. Juju is our service orchestration tool. So with Metal as a Service, what you would do is you would pixie boot your servers, and they would register with your MOS server, which you have already set up, or what in this case the tool is set up for you. Those machines will be ready to go, and then Juju will go and spin those machines up, pixie boot them, deploy the services to them, add all the relations so they can all talk to each other, and when it's all said and done, you should have a running cloud ready to go. And again, we've deployed a full cloud in 40 minutes, I think, or less, with MOS, Juju, and OpenStack. So it's pretty slick. And this is on multiple machines, not just a single laptop.
So where do you download this OpenStack and stuff?
I have them here in the next slide.
Set you up.
And setup's pretty simple. Right now it runs on 14.04 LTS. That's the release you want to have. 12.04 is not supported. But we have a PPA, which is a personal package archive. Right now this is where the code lives to get the single node Ubuntu OpenStack installer. So you'll need to get the latest Juju bits from our stable repository. 1404 does ship with Juju, but the version that's in there here is a little newer and it supports some of the features that are needed to make all this run. And you also want to add the cloud installer PPA and just update your app cache and then install the cloud installer package. And once you get it, you just run sudo cloud install. You'll be prompted for a password and whether or not you want to do single machine mode, multi-machine mode, or landscape mode. Landscape mode's not ready yet, but the option's there. And off you go. And again, it's very similar to DevStack. It'll install the packages for you. It bootstraps the Juju environment. And behind the scenes, it creates 3 KVM virtual machines. It'll create a cloud controller, and on that cloud controller is going to install via Juju all these services needed for your control node, and then installs them in those containers. And then it'll install a Neutron node in a separate KVM for your networking, and it'll install one computer for you. You do need a fairly hefty machine for it. Obviously on the virtualization capable machine, I would say quad core or bigger. 12 to 16 gigs of RAM at least. Anything less than that, you're going to have a hard time. I mean, it'll run, but it'll take a while for stuff to happen.
So that this runs, Cinder requires a separate partition. Does this script go and create something separate?
I don't believe it installs Cinder, but I have to check. But it does install Glance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have to look at that. I believe on the node control node, I imagine that's what it does. I'll need to double check with the other. But the KVM, yeah, it takes care of all that for you. I do have to check on the Cinder. Good question. And you'll need at least 100 gigs or more disk space. If you have an SSD, it's recommended just to make things faster. Yeah, this is still a fairly new tool. I got a single machine with 12 gigs of RAM and a 10-core Xeon up and running without any stumbles about 4 days ago. And we kind of did a soft launch on this earlier this summer, about 3 weeks ago. So they're still working on it. There's still some things that it pretty much works. I didn't have any major hiccups the whole time. But yeah, that's a good question. I haven't seen that. And then when you're done, you just run the cloud install with the U-flag single system in this case, and it tears down the Juju environment, kills all your containers, gets rid of them, uninstalls all the packages. I mean, it literally nukes it down to a clean state. So if you want to run it again, make sure that you reinstall the cloud installer package, and you can kick it off again. And I do have a laptop that can handle that, so what I might do while you guys are working on the DevStack stuff is I can get back up and running. See how long it takes.
Hey Ken,
Yes.
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
DevStack, is it stateless or? I was going to ask you about this. If this is, does it maintain the same? I mean, you shut down the machine, bring it back up.
It's supposed to.
Okay.
Yes. As far as I know, it does.
Okay.
Most of the time, lately I've just been tearing it down and starting it. I haven't shut the machine off and brought it back up to see what
For
happens.
DevStack, I don't know if I'm doing it right,
Right.
but it's not stable.
Right. DevStack is, you don't want to shut it down.
Yeah.
And not tear it down first cleanly.
Okay.
This should stay up when you reboot the machine.
Okay.
But that's an experiment I haven't tried yet either. I've typically just torn the thing down and shut the machine off. It's a good test. Maybe I'll try it.
What do you mean by containers?
So containers, in this case, I'm using a generic term. You have KVM, which is virtual machine container. You have something called Linux containers, which it's more of a, you could look at it maybe as a light VM, almost is what they call it, true on steroids. The Linux container will provide some service separation for you, and that it'll have its own IP address, and it's to to kind of go back a little bit on why Linux containers, or why we use them, is in Juju won't stop you from deploying several services on one machine. But a lot of times, some of those services need to have their own IP address or need to have their own resources to do whatever job they want to do. And in the past, and you still can, you can install a Juju charm, multiple Juju charms on top of each other on the same machine. We use a term called Hulk smashing, and that sometimes can end badly. So we found that when you use a Linux container with a Juju charm, it does provide just enough separation for that service for it to be able to function and not step on. Say one service might need a port, this other service might need the same port. You end up with just things failing all over the place. So the Linux container is not a full-blown VM. It's more of a church on steroids, I guess you could say. I mean, you can SSH into a Linux container, but it shares the same kernel as the host system. So it's not a fully separated OS, but it does provide enough separation for you for several charms to be able to work several services in conjunction with one another on the same machine without causing a big problem. But that's the basics, and there's where you can get more information on the Ubuntu installer, the documentation, and one of our developers, Adam Stokes, has done a lot of work with our OpenStack installer. He's got a lot of those on how to install a single node OpenStack instance, just like I was describing. And it is pretty easy. I mean, it's just like DevStack, and then you run one command, they're off to the races. It does everything for you. And the difference between, I think, DevStack and the cloud installer, our cloud installer will set up Neutron for you. It'll set up a real basic Neutron networking scheme for you, whereas DevStack, you have to tell it you want to use Neutron. They're comparable in some ways, whereas our cloud installer is good if you want to get familiar with our Juju and Moz tools, and maybe you want to show them off to someone to see, especially like on a single machine, to show them what Juju can do for you as far as helping you speed up your service deployments like clouds and stuff like that.
So you can install all the services like Keystone, Grants.
Yep, configures them, and then Juju services, we call them charms. And a lot of them will do what's called, they have relationships with each other, like Keystone needs to talk to MySQL, it sets up that relationship for you, it does all the magic behind the scenes. It's in the Juju black magic. This is magic.
Is it using MySQL or is it using Postgres?
It uses MySQL. This installer uses MySQL.
And
RabbitMQ, MySQL, Keystone, Glance, Cinder, I think. I'll have to check. Nova Cloud Controller, we have a charm for that. Nova Compute, Neutron, anything you need. And then once you've got it up and running, you can add more. As long as your single machine has the capacity for it, you can add more machines. It'll spin up a KVM. You can press a button in the console, say, hey, I want to add another machine. And it'll say, well, what do you want to add? Do you want to add Ceph? Ceph is an option. Swift storage, or add another compute node. You pick it, and it goes and spins up another KVM and deploys that service to it, wires everything in for you. So it does have, I guess, a little bit of a leg up on DevStack in that you can deploy multiple machines with it versus DevStack to kind of all in one. But I think either tool is great if you want to get familiar with OpenStack, with different tools to deploy OpenStack. I think both of these are really good.
How long does the process to install OpenStack take, typically?
Depends on if you in the real world or on this. Like if you did it by hand, it'll take days. I mean, I think if somebody really knew what they were doing, unless they scripted it all ahead of time, I mean, it would still take. I know for me, just deploying it to 3 bare metal servers last summer, or even in VMs, I mean, it took me at least 2 days to do it. I would say it would take by hand a good part of the day if you really, really knew what you were doing and had it all, scripted up and stuff. But these tools here will get you running in just a matter of hours. Like our cloud installer, that's the cool part about it. That's it for my talk. So if anybody's interested in firing up DevStack, I'll go back to the first page of the instructions here.
Is anybody
have at it.
doing that right now? Building it out? I know, David, you were.
Yeah.
So where are you guys at in terms of getting it built?
I've got Git, we're going through DevStack, I'm just gonna go ahead and pull down the repository DevStack. And then, I kinda wanna try both sides of
Sure.
this. Yeah, that'd be good.
And I can do cloud installer on this machine. It's got 16 gigs of RAM on it, so it ought to work. So yeah, that's all I had.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know, I mean, if they're working through it right now, I mean,
Sure, yeah.
we should share the screen.
Yeah. It's running on this.
Okay.
Whatever.
Could do that, yeah, if anybody wants to come up and see what he has running on the machine, feel free. Unfortunately, we had some AV problems where we can't display his laptop right now, but I don't know if anybody has reached a certain point and you want to like talk through it and do like workshop style.
So yeah, we can start right there. I'm gonna go ahead and grab the Git repo. Anybody that wants to give it a shot.